In this video you learn where to shoot a deer. We'll cover the 11 universal shot placement scenarios, review 18 diagrams, and you'll get 9 rules to guide you. All this will help set you up for success for pretty much any situation in the field. My background is rifle hunting, but the information is also relevant if you hunt with a bow. This video will not just teach you exactly where to shoot a deer, it'll help you aim fast, which is important, and more on that after the introduction, where I also share what successful shot placement has in common with military boot camp. Stay tuned and get the answer. Welcome to the Red Kettle channel. This is where you get a view under the bonnet. I'll share updates on product development and tips and tricks for efficient hunting. Today, it's all about where to shoot a deer. There's a lot of detail in the video, so you can watch it end to end or use the contents list in the description and skip to specific sections. In a moment, I'll list the 11 universal shot placement scenarios, but first a story about being fast and how it relates to shot placement. Where I'm from, we have national service, and I have fond memories of when I first got a chance to shoot my G3. There were aspects of boot camp I was less excited about. Aircraft recognition training. We had to be able to make a quick friend or foe identification when spotting an aircraft, and we practiced that skill with aircraft flashcards. This was not exactly my favorite, but it provides an important lesson when it comes to shot placement. Success in the field depends on your ability to shoot fast and accurately. More often than not, animals don't hang around, so you've got to be able to quickly acquire the correct sight picture. Enter the flashcards. Use the diagrams in this video as your flashcards, which reminds me that I have a bonus for you at the end. Here's a summary of the scenarios. In addition to the scenarios, you'll learn the 9 rules for correct shot placement as we go along. Before we start with the broadside shot, we need to cover one critical and foundational aspect of shot placement. There's several ways to kill a deer or the hoofed animal, and one of them stands out as being fast and reliable. The double long shot has the biggest margin of error, and it produces reliable killing. A hard shot might sound alluring, but it's not ideal. The heart sits low in the body, and shooting under it is likely to spell trouble. And surprisingly, a bullet straight through the heart alone can take a long time to take effect. And also, other advanced shots present additional challenges, so we'll leave them for now. Putting a bullet through both lungs of an animal would either create severe blood loss that causes fatal shock, collapse the lungs and cut off oxygen to the brain and other cells in the body, or both. And this is a surefire way to kill a deer. This leads us to shot placement rule number 1. As per the diagram, you'll see the lungs reach back into the animal's chest cavity, but ignore that when it comes to developing fast target acquisition practices. Instead, consider the vital triangle, which Kevin Robertson introduces in his book, The Perfect Shot. The center of the triangle corresponds with the center of the lungs, as well as the top of the heart, where you find all the arteries and veins meet. Determine the triangle with these 3 references: the bottom edge of the shoulder blade, the shoulder joint, and the tip of the elbow. Sometimes you can see the contour of the bones, but it's best to have a more reliable way to aim. The broadside shot is the shortest and most forgiving path through the lungs. In the ideal scenario we'll review here, you are at a 90-degree angle to the animal and at the same level. We've established that the center of the vital triangle is the best aiming point for speed and effectiveness. But where exactly should you put your crosshairs? To determine how far you should come up, follow rule number 2. As you can see, that corresponds with the center of the triangle. But where should you put your vertical post then? Easy. Follow shot placement rule number 3. And by center, I mean the center of the leg where it meets the body, because the lower part of the leg may reach further forward on a deer, depending on how it stands. So in summary, your sight picture should look like this for a full broadside shot. This is a foundational way to shoot an animal, and it's your first flashcard. I won't go into advanced shots in this video, but it's worth mentioning one other popular shot. With the high heart or center long shot, you hit good shoulder meat that'll potentially be bloodshot and wasted. You can move your sights further towards the middle of the animal, so your vertical post rests on the elbow point, just in the crease between the leg and the belly. That'll destroy the lungs and waste less meat, but you must be careful not to come too far back. As I said, the broadside shot is relatively easy on your bullet. Once we move to the quartering shots, you need to consider if your bullet is fit for purpose. Let's see why. Remember the bone structure triangle from the broadside shot. It was our friend then, creating a relatively free passage for a double long shot. If you take a front shot at a quartering animal, you need to think about the bullet's path as it travels through the animal. I once shot a female red deer with my 7x6.4, which is similar to a 280 Remington. I used a tipped bullet designed for deer. I thought I was a home free as the deer went down from the shot, but as the guide congratulated me on a job well done, the deer started moving and got up on all four. Fortunately, I reloaded immediately after the shot, so I was ready to shoot again, and I anchored the deer for good. When butchering the deer, we found the first bullet perfectly lodged in the shoulder knuckle. It wasn't a big deer. I used a bullet made for that size of animal, and I left the barrel of my rifle at a reasonable velocity. This is just one data point, but others have had the same experience. Please ensure that bullet you use can penetrate all the way to and through the vitals if you decide to take a front quartering shot, regardless of what distance you shoot at, especially on a larger animal. Enough said. When you do decide to take such a shot, where should you aim? Well, you want to put your bullet through both lungs. For a 45-degree broadside shot, that path looks like this. We've established you should come up somewhere between 1/3 and halfway up the body from the animal's chest. What about your vertical post? Well, the exact aiming point depends on how much the animal is quartering. Here's a key point to consider. The heart is offset slightly from the spot you aim at, so you don't want to put your vertical post midway between the legs. Instead, use rule number 4. So that's your flashcard image. Question, inside the upper leg or inside the lower leg? Well, generally speaking, inside the upper leg, but it depends on the angle, as I said before. At the end of the video, I'll link to another video with 10 real-life examples to give you even more detail. By the way, for quartering shots, you must also follow rule number 5. I'll explain why we're discussing the front shot and the rear quartering shot. And this brings us to the next scenario. With the rear quartering shot, you don't have the shoulder bone to worry about, but depending on the angle, you might penetrate the rumen. I'll create a separate video with more detail on key organs and shot placement. All I say here is that the rumen is full of undigested grass and is a tall order to shoot through, at least on a larger animal. And shooting through it will also introduce stomach content and bacteria in the body cavity, which is something you should try to avoid. Here's a diagram showing a 45-degree angle from the back. It looks like you're home free, but in the field the stomach will most likely be fuller and it sits flush with the sides of the animal. So beyond 45 degrees, you see it's easy to get in trouble. And I want you to recognize this situation as a potential issue. With that covered, where should you aim? Height-wise, you should still refer to rule number 2, between 1/3 and halfway up the body. Well, where should you put your vertical post? Well, use rule number 6. As discussed, the heart is offset from the front, so you do the opposite then for a front quartering shot. So here's your flashcard for the rear quartering shot. Look at it before you go to bed at night. Be ready. So if the challenge is with the quartering shots, the front shot straight on should be easy, right? I wish. This is why we have rule number 5. Your margin of error for significant tissue destruction becomes a lot smaller. Consider the broadside shot. You still penetrate both lungs even if you're a little off your target. And both is a key word here. So a front shot, the further your impact moves away from the center of the heart, the center of the animal, the less tissue you'll destroy. And unless you hit smack in the middle, the animal still have one good lung, and that's a problem. I once tracked an oryx in South Africa because of a broadside high lung shot that hadn't done enough damage. The animal went down from the shock and then took off. It took us 7 hours to catch up and put it out of its misery. By the way, more on shock in another video. Here's an illustration showing how little you have to work with for the front shot. I recommend that you don't take this shot unless you've already wounded the animal. And by the way, you'll notice that it won't take much head movement before you have a show-stopping object in the bullet path and a wounded animal to deal with. What about the opposite end? Shooting the animal up the rear, what some folks refer to as a Texas hard shot. By the way, I don't think that's fair to the good folks and serious hunters in Texas, but let's leave that discussion for now. Here's the problem with that shot. You combine the challenges of the rear quartering shot and the front shot, a limited target area and a great deal show-stopping material. In my book, you should only use this shot in an emergency and if you've already wounded the animal. You also need deep penetrating bullets to have any chance of success. Let me just pause on that one thing. It may sound like I've been preaching stout bullets, but I haven't. What I'm preaching is the right tool for the job. I'll upload a video with more detail on cartridge choice and bullet construction. For now, I'll add that in some cases you do need a bullet that expands fast. If you don't have much distance to work with when you shoot small deer species, you want a bullet that opens up fast enough to destroy lung tissue before it exits the animal. The right tool for the job. By the way, I've created a video with 5 questions that'll help you pick the right tool for the job. As a matter of fact, it'll help you plan the way you hunt. Here's a link. Maybe you're hunting from a tree stand, or perhaps you're fortunate enough to hunt in a mountainous or hilly area, which by the way is my favorite environment to hunt. In that case, you've got to consider the challenges or changes to aiming point that uphill and downhill shooting present. Whether you're shooting up or down, you've got to consider this. You're not aiming where you want to hit. As we discussed, your goal is to put a bullet straight through the middle of the lungs. However, your aiming point is some distance away from that point, so you've got to adjust the aiming point to ensure correct bullet path. It's worth noting that this is mainly relevant as the shot angle becomes steeper. Enter rule number 7. So how should you adjust? Well, follow rules number 8 and 9. I suppose it's a little like adjusting open sights back in the day. So let's look at the two examples. Using the center of the vital triangle inside the body as our target, you can see from the diagram that the aiming point changes drastically for steeper angles. Here's your flashcard. Shooting from above, you'll get much closer to the shoulder blade. With a bow, a light for animal cartridge with a fast expanding bullet, you have to be careful about what you do, because your margin of error is getting smaller at that angle. Shooting uphill, you can see how you've got to aim further down the body than a regular broadside shot. This is a relatively acute angle for shooting uphill, and I've chosen it to exaggerate and show you the difference. Consider the 20 degrees as the point where you need to adjust, and use this diagram as your flashcard. Now let's have some fun. Let's combine the quartering shots with the up and downhill shots. If you're in a tree stand in the woods with a rifle or bow, this is not an uncommon shot when the deer close. For the front quartering above version, you'll still have to consider the bone structure. More the shoulder blade than the shoulder knuckle. Depending on the deer's size, the quartering shot warnings still apply. And if you're a bow hunter, you need to consider if the shoulder bone or shoulder blade can deflect or stop your arrow. Front quartering uphill. As with the regular up and downhill shots, visualize the center of the vital triangle inside the body. Offset a little bit from the front legs. Here's your flashcard. Rear quartering downhill. Well, this is a typical tree stand shot. The animal is moving away from you and is less likely to spot any movement. Rule number 5 still applies. More than 45 degrees and you're in trouble. By the way, notice how your crosshairs are much closer to the spine, but if you shoot too close to it, you still penetrate both lungs. Hunting lots from tree stands? Then tattoo this flashcard on the inside of your left eyelid. Rear quartering uphill. This is an unusual shot unless you encounter an animal on a ledge on a hill above you. I once stalked a group of red deer along the base of a ridgeline. They moved up the ridge as I turned a corner and had a safe, clear uphill shot like this. I was on flat ground and the deer left before I could get to a knoll to take the uphill shot. With this flashcard you know where to aim, so don't come back with silly excuses like mine. Bring back a monster rack. Wow, did you ever imagine you could have so much fun with deer shot placement diagrams? Well, now you know. However, we only scratched the surface. I've got another essential shot placement video for you in a moment. First, a serious note. Remember the duty we have as hunters to be effective. We owe it to those magnificent deer we admire, hunt and harvest, and care for. Practice your craft as a hunter. Invest in understanding the behaviors and anatomy of the deer. Memorize the shot placement diagrams and use the 9 rules to help you learn and remember them. And as a reminder, here's a summary of the rules. I mentioned that bonus earlier in the video. We're adding the diagrams to the Efficient Hunting ebook, which is free. I'll put a link to the download page in the description. And I also suggest you check out this video with 10 shot placement examples from the field, or some of the videos we're adding to the Where to Shoot a Deer playlist. Over time they'll include shot placement pitfalls, bullet selection and much more.